Hello and welcome. Today we are going to talk about DeepRemix. Now this is a application that allows you to take an audio file and break it down into individual tracks. By tracks, of course, I mean individual instruments that make up the song. They can be separated so that you can work with them individually. So, to begin with, let's just quickly go through the interface. Up here you have your standard options as far as file and edit go. A lot of these are grayed out right now because we're not doing anything. We don't have a audio file in here. Same with audio. You can, loop your selection and do a number of things here that I'm not going to go through in this tutorial. The view is the interface. You can turn things off and on, timeline, beat markers, all the things that you're going to see once we import an audio file in. Panels are all these little sections that have the blue bar on the top of them. We can take those out, or we can bring them back in depending on what we're working with. For now, we're going to leave them at the default, is what they are when you open it. Okay, and as far as individual panels go, what you're going to find, you have this interactive help. So whenever you highlight something or you put your cursor on something, it's going to give you some basic information down here on exactly what you're putting your cursor on. Some are generalized, like in layers. Each one of these is just referred to as a new layer. It doesn't specifically tell you, the type of instrument, but then of course, again, here's your keyboard. Pretty much represents your MIDI. I mean, you're bringing audio in, it's breaking it down into instruments, and the keyboard actually shows you each individual note that is laid out here by each instrument, which you'll see soon. Going over here, you have your effects. You can play with the pitch of it. All these, again, hold your cursor. It will show you over here what it can be used for in a basic form. So you have pitch, you have time, which has to do with things like reverb, delay, a number of options here that you can play with, and these can be applied to a track, or they can be applied to a single note. As you're going to see soon here, the notes will be laid out, and you can just highlight an individual note, and you can change it and use any of these options to enhance it in some way. Bring up level, pan, work on your panning, add different filters as far as your EQ goes, gate, compression, all kinds of little things here that if you go into help and you go to the manual, you can find everything you really need to know in detail. I'm not going to do that in this video. Up here you have your beats per minute of the piece. That's just the default here. Once you bring a piece in, it will detect how fast it's going, so on and so forth, what the time signature is, and it will properly adjust for that. So when you use DeepRemix, you usually are adding a mixed file, and that, whether it's just maybe an audio background, soundtrack for a video, or a complete song that somebody wants you to remix, and they don't have access to the masters, the individual tracks, but they feel, maybe the song came from many years ago, and they want to use today's technology to make it sound better. And that's what this will allow you to do. You can take that song, you can bring it in here, you can break it down into individual tracks, and you can bring those tracks into a DAW and remix, enhance them. You can do a little bit here if you want with these options, or you can just take the raw files and bring them into your DAW, and you can do all the work there, which is what probably most people would prefer to do, have more control. So let's just get to how this works. I have a backing track that I used in one of my videos that I'm going to use as an example here. I don't want to be violating any copyright problems. That backing track is something that I created, so as far as that goes, that's something you want to be careful of. You don't want to be violating copyright laws. So in order to get a file in here, there's a couple of different ways. You can open a file and bring it in. You can click on this, it'll open up your file explorer, and you can grab it. Or the other way is, if you have something ready, like I do here, you can just drag it over and drop it in. And that will bring up a dialog with some options in it. These options are pretty self-explanatory, but these are the categories that DeepRemix will use in order to separate your audio. Some of them are pretty general, drums and percussion, but it does a good job of taking drums and separating your kick, your snare, your cymbal, maybe your hi-hat, to some degree. Bass always gets separated really good. I'm impressed with that. Normally there's very little, if any. I don't even think I've heard any bleed over in bass. It's pretty clean. Voice is the same way. The only thing about voice is if you have backup voice, if you have a lead singer and backup singers, it will combine those into one file. Now, you could further, rip that file and see if you could separate backup vocal from your regular vocals. I haven't tried it. I haven't found a need to do it yet, but it's certainly something that you might want to experiment with. Other sounds and instruments is generalized. That could be synths, it could be strings, it could be horns, it could be somebody shaking a tambourine. And it will do its best over here in these layers to figure out what it is and label it in some way. Then you have separate guitar and piano. Now, guitar and piano are very close in range with each other, so sometimes it's hard for this to separate them unless you check this and tell it specifically you want to separate guitar and piano. But what you'll find is there's going to be bleed over probably into each track, to where in order to hear the instruments at their strength, you'll probably have to have them both activated over here when you listen. But if you got the separation, that allows you to do what you want to the individual instrument. The last thing here is save stems. Stems, if you have worked with audio, are just a rip of a song. It breaks it down into, the categories of instrumentation: drums, bass, guitar, keyboard, voice. It just gives you a raw file, allows you to save it without any type of enhancement to it, and you can save those. When you check that, it will take these and it will save them into separate files as much as possible, and then you can just import them into your DAW, work with them that way. The other thing with this is, if you only want certain things, if I just want the voice, I can just choose to pull the voice out, either stems or to work in here in the actual application itself. So you can choose whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about the other things if you don't want them. In this case, we're just gonna go with the defaults. If I choose to save stems, you're gonna see that this is going to drop in time. And the reason is, as I said, it's just pulling these things out into, it's not doing anything to make them sound better in any way, or it doesn't allow you to do that in here, I should say. It just saves them into a folder, and then you work them with whatever DAW or whatever system that you have to manipulate audio. But it doesn't take as long when you do that. When you don't do that, it takes longer because it's more intricate. It's trying to do its best to separate everything. So, if you have a good graphics card, this is going to take far less. And the reason being is it will use that graphics card in the processing. Now, I happen to have a higher end graphics card, and so when you see 4 minutes here, don't get fooled if when you open this up in your PC or Mac and your graphics card isn't high end in any way, you could see 15 or 20 minutes here for the same file that I'm doing right now. So if you do have a high-end graphics card, when you install this program, it will detect that. It will ask you to download additional files to work in collaboration with this app, and it will make things a lot quicker, a lot easier for you. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to rip the file, and I'm going to skip ahead for you so you don't have to sit here and watch this thing process. So I'll see you on the other side. So here we are, and what you see here is a different canvas. It has everything laid out here as far as bars and your beats. As you notice over here, the BPM went up to 144 because this song has a little bit of not speed to it, but the way it's laid out, it needs a higher tempo. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to see here, all these colors, this palette of colors, that these represent the actual instruments that DeepRemix detected in the piece. And what you have here is a list. They're called layers in this, but they're tracks, different separate tracks. And the colors coincide with the instrument on the canvas here. Okay, if I hold my cursor on one, it will tell me what the note is. 4th octave of G on a keyboard. That's E. So I mean, you can see there's a benefit to everything because you can see what note it is. You know how this one, you know, kind of slides up a half a step here. So I mean, that's interesting, or a step. So in this layout, we can see the separate tracks. Now let's listen to this, just so you get an idea of what exactly the song is. So you can hear it's just a basic kind of jazzy style song that is used in this case as a backing track or a soundtrack for a video, one of my videos that I recently did. So if we look at all the individual things in it, we see some things in here that really, one thing especially that isn't present is voice, and that's just one of the default layers that it places down regardless whether it's there or not. But when you want to look at an individual track, you solo it out. Now because I know there's no voice in this, when I hit solo everything should disappear, which it does. There's no voice in it, so that just says no, there's no voice. Okay. So once you play the thing, you can go along and just solo out the instruments to hear how they sound. Like right now we're just hearing the piano, which is probably the lead instrument in the tune. Now we have guitar too, and it doesn't stand out as much, but if I just solo it, now you can hear it. Now because it sounds a little bit you know, the volume in it isn't as strong. What you got to understand is sometimes these tracks will bleed over into each other. Okay, in other words, if we're going by frequency, which is how this you know occurs, this separation basically occurs by frequencies. You know, some of the frequencies can bleed over into other tracks, or they're just not separated. Now obviously that's the drawback of this type of thing, but you know, if you can at least get some separation, like if I play both of these together, it probably covers the spectrum of both. See, now we're just seeing keyboard. And now you hear the guitar come back in. And it could be that guitar also is present here. And this is a string from what I recall, and it just branded it as other, and it put a keyboard symbol next to it. But you could change that title if you want and say strings. So let's listen to the drumming. Take this off and we will play a little bit. We're going to solo the kick. We'll add this part, this very little, just some bleed overtones. Most of it resides here. You're going to see that that's way down here. It's below the keyboard. The frequencies are way down here. See, now when we add the snare into it, now we have, other frequencies up here that are present. So if I kick some bass in there, and again, the same thing exists here. The bass doesn't really sound as strong as it sounds because part of its frequencies lie within these other tracks. Could even be here. See, now you hear how the bass kind of picked up a little bit there. It got more, stands out more. If you look over here, you see how these are colors are telling you what instrument. Blue is for bass. So, it's very detailed piece of software that I find it, a good resource to help me understand a few things about how the song is broken down as far as the sounds, the individual sounds go. So, now another thing is that if you find something, say this, when I hit that, you hear it just play by itself, okay? And that is just that one little portion of the keyboard. Just like, that's just a little short note. Some of them are shorter, but it has to do with how it's carrying tone. I mean, you can hear all kinds of stuff mixed in that. And that's louder, lower, your bass. And to that end, if you hear that, say that's your string, okay? Maybe I say, well, you know what? I'd like to hear that be a little bit louder right in there. Well, this is where I can use this. I can go over here and I can just slide this up a little notch or two. And if I just want to hear that, then I have to go over here, okay? And that just brings this note out. And as I put this up, you're just going to hear that note. See, it's going to get louder. See how it got louder. So you double click in the black area and it will reset it, is what it will do. The other way that I can make the whole track louder is just to go over here and just crank this up a few. And then when I play it, I'm going to take that one off. Just go back here and we'll play. So, see, and I've jacked up the whole track to make it stand out a lot more. So, hear how the strings are louder now. They almost become the lead instrument, is what happens, and the thing about this is it's a good tool if you take the time to sit down and learn how everything works. You're going to find that this thing has no end to it. Another good feature that you might find interesting has to do with the musical scale here. Now, if you set the musical scale and you just have it detect. Now, you can set scales if you're creating here, and you can do that using the keyboard if you're doing the creating right within this program. But if you detect the scale, and in this case it figured it right out, a harmonic minor, which is the one I used when I constructed this song, because I wanted it to have that certain kind of feeling to it that or any kind of harmonic minor scale gives to you. And the best thing about this is that now when we go back, okay, and we want to solo out the guitar, and look what happens up here. It actually figures out the chords, and even though you're not hearing them that well, and then it gives you chord frames. It shows you how to play these chords. Now obviously there are things in here that are better left played by keyboards, some of these chords, these passing chords and everything. But whatever, you know, the major chord change is at the beginning of the bar, then that's going to be like it starts out in F sharp, F major 7th. And if you sat down with the guitar and just strummed along with it and made all your changes accordingly, you would be able to play along with it. And I find that to be a really good tool. And obviously if you've created the song yourself, you know what the chord progressions are. So the only other thing here now is you've completed all your edits, and you say, well, you know what, now how do I get these out of here and into my DAW? And it's like with a lot of sound editing applications, you just go to File and you go to Export, and you can, when you hit Export, it's going to give you, a default folder, or you can select a folder, you can name it what you want, and what it'll do is for each of these tracks that it creates, it will add the word piano or guitar or bass on the end of it, so you know that this track is that particular instrument. And so you could say my song, and it'll put an underscore, and it'll probably put piano for the piano track. Well, that's what it will put. So then you can also choose your format. I usually just leave it on 16-bit. I just use what they have here because it works. Now the only other thing is whether you want something to be stereo or mono. Now if it's an individual instrument like bass, you might want that to be mono, but you can't do that individually here. Okay, if you're gonna do the whole thing, I just choose stereo. I mean, you can, all these except for drums can pretty much be mono, and you'd still be able to mix them well. So I leave that up to you. And then what to export: full rip, selected time and notes, loop region. You can set up a loop, and you can just take that region. Just selected rips, you can choose the ones that you just want to export. You're not going to be bound to exporting the whole thing. Just say, if I say, well, I don't need all those, I just need the bass, but you ripped them all anyway just to see how it mixed together, well, then you can just choose to to take the rips that you want. Then of course, what files to create: single files for each track, which is the default, separate stems. Again, we've talked about at the beginning what stems were, or separate layers. I just keep it at default. I mean, there's no point of making everything any more complex than it needs to be. You're just trying to get these things separated so you can work with them. So that is the basics of DeepRemix. This tool will at least get you enough so that you can enhance, you can clean it up, whatever you need to do to it, EQ it, whatever you need, you can do that and export it out, and then remix it together and come up with something that people are going to listen to and say, wow, what happened to that? So that about wraps up this tutorial on DeepRemix. I hope you learned something out of it, and if you did, you can comment and let me know, if you have any questions that I can help you with. I'll do my best. I'm no expert by any means, but we learn as we go, and so that's the way I look at it. The best thing you can do is take this thing and work with it, and eventually you'll get it down, and you'll be happy that you spent the money for it, because it definitely is worth the money that you pay for it. So that being said, give me a like if you like it. You can give me a dislike if you think I'm too long-winded. Well, that's fine too. Or you can subscribe if you feel that you want to look at more of my stuff. I do have other videos and I'm building them up all the time. So I appreciate you watching this, and I will just say have a good day.